Hello everybody. In this video we are going to talk about area and units of area. So area is the amount of space that a flat shape or surface takes up. Okay. Area is measured in square units. So here in this example I have a rectangle, and to measure the area of this rectangle I just need to count the number of squares that make up this rectangle. So here I have 12 squares. So the area of this shape is 12 square units. Now, I said units because I don't know how long this distance is from here to here. Is it a millimeter long? Is it a centimeter long? A meter? A kilometer? I don't know. So, of course, when you're measuring a space, you will decide what unit to measure in. If you're using a meter stick, you'll be measuring in centimeters or meters and so on. So let's say, for example, the distance from here to here is 1 millimeter. Okay, that means the distance from here to here is also 1 millimeter because they're the same size. So this here is 1 square millimeter. This is another square millimeter. That's another square millimeter. So I'll have 12 square millimeters. Now in short, I can write 12 millimeters with a 2 on top. That 2 represents a square. Okay? And it also represents the fact that this is two-dimensional. It has length and width, right? Now, let's say, for example, that distance did not represent a millimeter. Let's say it represented a centimeter. Okay? So from here to here, this was 1 centimeter long. Okay? So this is 1 square centimeter. It's a square and it's made up by 1 centimeters. This is another square centimeter. That's another. That means I'll have 12 square centimeters. And I can represent that as 12 centimeters squared. And I think you kind of get the gist. So if this was a meter and this was 1 meter, then this would be 12 meters squared. Or if it was a kilometer, 12 kilometers squared. If it was inches, 12 inches squared, and so on, right? It really depends on the units that we are using. But in this example, those units are not given. Okay? So how big is a square unit? If we want to visualize it, how big is a square millimeter? How big is a square centimeter? And so on. Now, the smaller the unit, of course, the smaller the square that we are creating, right? So let's start with centimeter. This is about a centimeter long, if you look at your ruler, and this is about a centimeter long as well. So if I create a square like this is approximately 1 centimeter square. Now a millimeter, if you use your ruler, I'm just going to estimate. I'll say maybe about this long. This is about a millimeter. So this is about 1 millimeters squared, right? A square meter, now I can't draw that on the screen obviously, but what I want you to think about is a meter stick. Okay, so pretend this is a meter stick here. I want you to visualize how big a meter stick is, and then you have another meter stick here. The square that is created, this is about 1 meters squared. Okay, now for a kilometer, well, I usually estimate a kilometer as like 3 blocks, right? Like the distance between 3 traffic lights. So if this is that distance between 3 traffic lights and that's another distance, then that entire area is 1 kilometer squared. Now, of course, the bigger the unit, the bigger that square. We use smaller square units to measure the area of smaller spaces, and bigger square units to measure the area of bigger spaces. And I'm going to give you some examples so you have a visual. For a square millimeter, we can use a square millimeter to measure the space that maybe a penny takes up. So what we do is, if we have a penny, is we ask ourselves is how many of these little squares will fit inside that penny right here. See what I mean? Or maybe the area of your pinky nail, something like that. So it's a very small area. Square centimeters, so these ones here, it's how many of these would fill up a space of a certain object. So, for example, it could be the surface of your phone, or the surface of your book, or a piece of paper, or perhaps maybe the surface of your calculator or something like that. So centimeters squared would be appropriate. Millimeters squared would be way too small. For square meters, you can use square meters to measure the area of a surface of a pool or a tennis court, or maybe a basketball court or a gym. Square kilometers, these are huge, and we usually use them to measure the areas of cities and countries and islands. If you Google, for example, the area of Alberta, it'll be in either square miles or square kilometers. So this is for huge spaces. So we wouldn't really measure the area of a textbook using square kilometers. It's kind of ridiculous because a square kilometer is huge, right? How many of those would we fit on a textbook surface? That's just way too big. Now, there is another unit that we use for area, and it's hectares. Okay, so this is how we spell it. And hectares are special. They're basically made up of squares that are made up of 100 meters by 100 meters. So I want you to imagine 100 meter sticks here, laying one on top of the other, side by side. And here 100 meter sticks. This is the square that is made up by those. Okay, and hectares are usually great for measuring areas of land such as farms and acreages and so on. Okay, so for example, 1 hectare is equal to, and we'll talk about this later as well, is 10,000 meters squared. Okay, but we'll get into this as well in the next video. So this is an introduction about area and units of area.